Welcome back to Hardware Unboxed. Today we're getting super serious with another top 5 best video. Yeah, as always, these are just a bit of fun, and this one is actually a follow-up to last month's top 5 worst GPUs. I asked viewers what their top 5 best GPU list looks like, and only looking at GPUs though that have been released in the last 5 years or so. Many of you came back with very similar looking lists, and many of them were choices that I also nominated myself. So I've taken what I think are the best 5 from the list suggested, added a little few of my own in, and this should make for a nice stroll down GPU memory lane. It was a hot summer's day here in Victoria, Australia when the Radeon HD 7950 was released on the 24th of February 2012. Temperatures soared to 37 degrees and I remember it like it was yesterday. Actually, that's a lie, I just looked up the weather history graph, but I'm sure it was a nice day nonetheless. Anyway, we're not here to recall the weather, but rather pay tribute to AMD's second in command of the illustrious Tahiti series. The Radeon HD 7950 played second fiddle only to the 7970, and with a release date MSRP of just $330 US, it was considered a real bargain at the time. Priced to be 40% more affordable than the 7970, it packed just 5.5% fewer cores. Because of that, it could be overclocked to actually match and even beat the stock 7970. It also brushed off Nvidia's then current flagship, the GTX 580, which cost $500, and it was also 30% faster than AMD's previous generation flagship part, the Radeon HD 6970. Some might even say it aged like a bottle of fine wine. Almost 6 years later, it's still able to provide very playable performance at 1080p in modern titles, and it's certainly fared much better than Nvidia's GTX 750 over the years. That particular model was released 2 months prior for $350. No, I'm not trolling you guys, but I bet a few of you wish I was. When I put together my top 5 worst GPU list, many of you voiced concern about a lack of a GTX 970. Even today, with very little evidence to support the argument, some claim that the GTX 970 is a broken GPU that's suffering from its balked VRAM buffer. The GTX 970 was a highly controversial GPU released by Nvidia, and yet despite that, one of their most successful ever. Out of the gate, the GTX 970 was met with rave reviews for its unbeatable value. Shortly after the glowing reviews though, it was discovered that roughly 13% of the 4GB VRAM buffer was partitioned off, limiting it to a much narrower memory bus. So while the card did technically have 4GB of memory on board, it wasn't actually capable of the performance claimed. Rather, the GPU was limited to a memory throughput of 196GB per second when working from the primary partition, and just 28GB for the smaller half-gigabyte partition. This, however, didn't change the fact that at the time, the glowing performance seen in reviews was the exact same performance gamers were receiving. The worry, though, was that as gaming titles inevitably became more bandwidth hungry, the GTX 970 would fall into a complete heap. This is a legitimate concern, at least to a certain extent. Despite the controversy though and the negative backlash, this GPU really helped to strengthen Nvidia's position, and it became one of their best-selling GPUs of all time. Today the GTX 970 is still going strong according to my own findings, and it recently impressed us in Destiny 2 even at 1440p. AMD's R9 290 went on sale in November of 2013 at an MSRP of just $400 US, making it 27% more affordable than the 290X. That was fantastic value when you consider the R9 290 should never be more than, say, 9% slower than the R9 290X, and in fact, on average, it was just 5% slower according to my tests. So in a sense, the R9 290 made the R9 290X redundant, much like the GTX 780 did to the GTX Titan. As good as the 290 was though, it wasn't without a few shortcomings. AMD's own 290 series cards ran very hot, that's the reference coolers I'm talking about, and they did hit temperatures as high as 95 degrees in a matter of minutes when gaming. This issue though was later solved by board partners as models from the likes of Gigabyte, MSI and Asus featured much bigger coolers with triple fan designs. The key thing to note here though is that back in 2013, the R9 290 really put the heat on the GTX 780, and it was so good that AMD decided to rebrand it as the R9 390 for $330, where it would do battle with the more modern GTX 970. A battle that it ultimately lost if you look at the sales figures, but today the R9 290 and R9 390 are still going very strong, and they certainly are still taking it to the GTX 970 and even more modern GPUs. In fact, in a good number of games, the R9 290 still hangs in there very respectably with the mid-range offerings such as the GTX 1060 and RX 480. Anyway, I'll always remember the R9 290 as an awesome value high-end GPU from 2013. And even now in 2017, it still packs quite the punch, and it will no doubt continue to serve gamers well for years to come. Nvidia really impressed us with the efficiency and performance of the Maxwell-based GeForce GTX 980 back in 2015. Then 9 months later, socks were blown completely off, and barefoot gamers everywhere were shocked by how mighty the GTX 980 Ti was back in 2015. With almost 40% more CUDA cores than the GTX 980, the new Ti model was a complete and utter beast. Later that month, AMD tried to spoil the party with their Radeon R9 Fury X, and AMD fans boasted about 10% performance bumps over the GTX 980 Ti, but that just turned out to be wishful thinking and was quickly drowned out by the sound of whining pumps. Ooh, that one's going to get me a few downvotes. Anyway, the GTX 980 Ti did remain the performance champ, and even to this day, it's still a good bit faster. A major advantage the 980 Ti had over the Fury X was its insane overclocking headroom. It was very easy to extract around 20% more performance from the GeForce graphics card, and if comparing overclocking results, well, that was just a complete death blow to the Fury X. Today, heavily overclocked GTX 980 Ti's can match overclocked GTX 1070, so if you paid $650 almost 2.5 years ago, you got a pretty good deal as it is mimicking $400 GPU performance today. With the exception of the GTX 1080 Ti, the 980 Ti is probably the most impressive flagship GPU we've seen in many years. Now, given everything I just said about the Radeon R9 Fury X, it seems a bit strange to be ending this roundup on the Radeon R9 Fury, the baby Fury, which is actually physically the largest of them all, but anyway. After releasing the compact liquid-cooled Fury X, AMD went on to release a much larger non-X version, which was just simply called the Fury. It had 13% fewer cores, but for the most part it wasn't really that much slower, and at $550 it was quite a bit cheaper. This priced it alongside the GTX 980, and even today the two do still trade blows. The R9 Fury though, it really suffered due to a lack of supply, and shockingly just two of AMD partners were able to supply Fury graphics cards, and that was Asus and Sapphire. Earlier this year though, it was possible to purchase either the Asus or Sapphire models for under $250 US, and at that price they were insane bargains. Of course, cryptocurrency mining has spoiled that, as it has for all GPU sales, and now they're pretty much impossible to buy anyway. Still, the Radeon R9 Fury has continued to age well, so those that snapped one up cheap will be grinning from ear to ear, and hopefully in the not too distant future, you'll once again be able to find one online for an irresistible price. But even if they never present themselves as a good value option again, they did provide bargain hunters with some excitement in early 2017. Well, there you have it, and now it's time to let me have it in the comments below. If you happen to agree with me though, my picks, then that probably places you in the minority, so rather than miss out on all the action, let me know if you've come across any truly horrible power supplies from well-known brands. I've got a few of my own to share in a future video, but I'd love to hear if you guys have any of your own stories to share. Actually, I'll quickly tell you just one of mine. I once had a 1200 watt power supply from a well-known brand catch on fire at a LAN party and burn through the ventilation in the bottom of the case and scorch the surface that the PC was sitting on. The most shocking part was, while flames and smoke were billowing from the PC, it just kept on gaming. It wasn't until I grabbed the power cord and pulled it from the wall that the system shut down, and then we just had a horrible smell and a burnt table to deal with. Anyway, as always, I'm keen to read all your comments and maybe even leave a cheeky reply or two. I'm your host, Steve. See you again soon, guys.